Hello everyone, I'd like to speak to you in nicer conditions, but as you can see by my surroundings, I'm in a shithole. I'm being exposed and hunted down for trying to inform the masses of an incredibly public and declassified information. Controller drift. You see this thing? Well, watch what happens when I do this. See? I told you so!
Analog sticks have been a topic of pretty heated discussion this console generation. I've heard many first-hand accounts of PS4, PS5, Xbox and Joy-Con controllers all succumbing to drift. The easiest way to explain stick drift is to think of them as ghost inputs, where your controller will seem to think that the analog stick is being pressed in a certain direction and act accordingly.
It's so nice to think of it as a little ghost pushing my analog stick when it's actually my $60 controller drifting!
Sometimes, natural defects on analog sticks can cause controller drift right out of the box. For example, many Xbox Elite Series 2 controllers arrive just completely busted. The Elite Series 2 controller is probably the biggest example of a premium controller, featuring a bunch of different customizable parts and features compared to a regular controller, such as on-the-fly button remapping, back paddles, and even swappable analog sticks. Look at that, you can make this one super tall!
Just remember, it's not the size of your analog stick that matters, it's how you use it. And Xbox used it really shittily.
The Elite's issues weren't limited to its analog sticks, but I'll focus on those because this is a public service announcement, damn it, and I don't have a lot of time.
Because why go into detail of this incredibly important and public matter when I could just gloss over the details and incite a panic?
Drifting was clearly the most common issue. You can see people's menu cursors keep flying straight up after they press them briefly, and characters continue to move on their own. It seems like these issues are far less common now, thankfully. I mean, if Xbox is still willing to sell the controller and throw it onto design labs, then that has to count for something. But these issues were rampant. There are reports of the bumpers falling off, face buttons that didn't work, and a really itchy grip.
It's the controller equivalent of an ugly Christmas sweater. You know your grandma put a lot of love and effort into making it for you, but it's about 5 sizes too small, incites a rash, smells funny, and makes a weird rattling noise whenever you shake it. But unlike grandma sweaters, Microsoft were asking for $180 for this thing. For the features it has, I don't think the price point is outrageous by any means, but people need to know what they're getting before they buy, which is why I'm making this public service announcement. For anyone in the November 4th, 2019 region, please steer clear of the Elite Series 2 controller.
So that more or less covers controllers defective out of the box, but there's an even worse plague spreading across the gaming hardware world. Something known as wear and tear errors. Yeah, there's no getting around this. It's a pretty well-known fact that the more you use something, the more tired it's going to become. This is becoming prevalent in some older controllers, like the N64s. These are some of the earliest analog sticks in existence, which makes sense because they're also some of the worst. You can delve into the technicalities of it if you want, but my dumb gamer brain just goes, hard plastic, thin base, time to snap this over my knee and play with a real man's controller. It honestly wouldn't surprise me to see these sticks start to snap in half or just completely detach from the system someday. But back to modern controllers, the two that have most recently come under fire for drifting are the DualSense and, if you can really fucking believe it, the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons.
Christ, are they really? Next thing you'll tell me is that there's a pig flying in the sky. I should get out more.
The DualSense definitely had less coverage than the Joy-Cons, but the issue is still a little too real for my liking. I've had 1 or 2 of my own DualSenses start to drift on me, which was a real bummer, but these issues are caused by wear and tear. It seems that some analog sticks are just more prone to it than others, because I've never had any of my DualShock 4s drift. But then again, I've heard plenty of people say their DualShock 4s have started to drift. So what does this all mean?
We're all going to hell.
Ultimately, it means any analog stick can drift. I think that's just the way they're designed, to be honest. The best thing that a company can do is offer repairs or replacement controllers whenever possible. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Hello, my least favourite, most favourite, least favourite company of all time. The Switch launched with these fancy choking hazards known as the Joy-Cons. They had all sorts of useless shit crammed into them, like an X button. But even as early back as 2017, people were really complaining about drifting their Joy-Cons. Now, you've probably been watching this PSA for long enough to realise that complaints at launch are fairly common, but the drifting complaints, they just didn't stop. It seemed like across 2018 and 2019, the complaints just kept growing and growing.
It's like this with growth I've had on my back for a while. There was just no stopping it.
So, what did Nintendo, the greatest video game company of all time, do in the wake of this? I think I've seen a eulogy do better damage control than this. In 2020, Nintendo claimed that Joy-Con drift wasn't a big inconvenience or issue. Really? Because this is very clearly a big issue. If you're using a drifting controller, then you have to fight to bring that thing in the other direction. My Joy-Cons are starting to go a little funky, so now I hardly ever use them. I'll always default to a Pro controller if I can, and if not, I'll probably just play something else.
Which is, quite literally, the definition of an inconvenience. So what's the moral of the story? Don't use video game controllers. Ever. This is what big companies don't want you to know. They're evil. Nintendo laughs at little children suffering from Joy-Con drift. PlayStation want to see your Call of Duty KD sink like a stone. And for every Elite Series 2 controller sold, Microsoft shoots a baby koala dead. You gotta believe me, guys, they don't want you to know any of this. They're probably gonna lock me in jail and throw away the key for even saying this shit. Wait, are they planting seed 4?